Hey there, welcome to Coffee Solo for the May 31st, 2025 episode. It's about 10:40 in the evening on May 31st, episode 2025-05-3101. I myself kind of dig the numbering scheme, which I think I started off by saying in the first episode of this audio program. It's similar to DNS serial numbers. When you update its record, a DNS record on your zone file. You serialize it, and usually it's the year, month, day, and then a 01, 02, 03, and so on. Anyway, just a little throwback in case you missed that one. Today, we are talking about when a plan comes together, the title of today's episode. I literally have 3 bullet items, but the summary, the original A-Team, quite an inspiration. A few things are going in the correct direction for a change. It's always nice. The A-Team was a television show sometime in the 80s. And if you happen to notice the cover art for today's episode, that is George Peppard, the original Hannibal Smith. The movie the movie is really a different beast, but the TV show had a certain charm to it. Hannibal Smith, played by George Peppard, famously, I probably at least once an episode said with his cigar, either biting it or taking it out of his mouth and saying, "I love it when a plan comes together." So there you go. When a plan comes together, let's get. First of all, the links, as usual, point to the other coffee website, buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo, and the posts section. I'm still trying to figure out. I mean, it's not really complicated, but I would like to reduce the number of links in each of my other audio programs so I don't have to repeat 4 different links, 2 for Buy Me a Coffee and 2 for Ko-fi.com. That's the one you're listening to now, or at least where you hopefully found this audio program initially, ko-fi.com. So yeah, there you go. The 3 bullet items I have, and then we'll see what else I come up with, if anything. First of all, the status of my injury. The last time I recorded a show was on Tuesday evening, Tuesday the 27th of May. It had been about 12 hours, if I recall correctly, since my life flashing before my eyes fall on some steps. Briefly, I was carrying a box of broken down boxes because I knew that the recycled dumpster where I live was recently emptied the day before, which meant it was probably about halfway full by 7 in the morning. So I was going to go walk around the neighborhood for a nice morning walk. I usually do a nice 3-mile loop. So I was all ready to go. And so I had my phone, luckily, which was may have been useful, although it wasn't. Then I grabbed this. I thought, I'll grab this box of boxes and I'll chuck it in the recycle bin on the way out. So I carried it, and there's a little 4-step flight of stairs to go into the parking structure where dumpster is. So as I was going down those steps without even thinking about it, I missed the final step. So I basically took a double step, and the box, I didn't see all this. It was blocking my view. So that tilted me forward. I landed strangely, and I think now, looking back, and judging from my recovery process, I probably basically rolled my ankle. I heard a popping noise. I know I had abrasion, a scrape on my knee, not a bruise. And I saw stars, and I saw into the future, into the past. I couldn't function. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't feel any. I was just ridiculous. Maybe mild shock. And, so I sat there for a minute. I was feeling my leg, my ankle, and all this, right leg. And my fibula, which is the smaller bone in your shin, it's kind of the outer bone behind. The front of your shin is your tibia. So the fibula rotates around your tib, not all the way around, but it rotates when you turn your ankle and whatnot. Hopefully you don't turn too far. And when I pushed on it, it moved, and I was like, oh, that can't be good. So I'm envisioning like half of my fibula moving and the other half not. But it turns out by 12 hours in, I was not bruised and swelling and unable to move. As I mentioned in the original story, the original retelling, I walked across the street to an urgent care facility. And when I got there, I figured, if I'm able to walk here and my leg is still not, and by the way, I do have a cane that I randomly had, luckily, and that is coming pretty big handy. So I had the cane and I walked very slowly. But I said, if I'm able to walk a good 200-300 yards across the street and down a block, this can't be that bad. So ICE, rest, the RICE acronym, rest, ICE, compression, elevation. So I did the elevation and the ICE part, and of course some rest. I didn't compress because like I said, no bruising, no swelling. Anyway, so at 7 o'clock at night, I was telling this story. Now, in the interim, I've continued to be careful. I've continued to use the cane. Sometimes I've found when I get out of bed, it's like, I guess, being horizontal. So the fluids have moved around. And so it's probably a little bit swollen, or at least, so I get out of bed and it's quite painful. And on, say, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, it was super painful. It was super painful to walk, take the first step, forget it. Probably go to the bathroom or something, and whatever those first steps were, it was ridiculous. And I was like, maybe this, I don't know what's going on. This is horrible. But, eventually I got the pattern. So a few steps and then it kind of loosens up a little bit and everything's good. And then the rest of the time moving around is basically okay. It's a little painful. I could stand on my right leg. I can walk with or without cane. So the cane is really for balance when I'm getting out of bed at this point, just to make sure. But every day it's been a little bit easier. And then was it Friday? Maybe it was Friday morning. I was standing here at my computer where I am right now, standing desk, of course. So no rest for the injured. I don't know if you've ever experienced something where you have swelling of some sort and suddenly you can feel it just like a balloon, and wow, it just felt like something happened and I could turn my ankle a bit. I was, twisting my foot back and forth, not externally, just moving my foot. I was like, it feels more flexible now. Friday, so yesterday I walked to the grocery store across the street, walked around a little bit. So it's been getting easier and easier. So the take home, never had the swelling, never had the bruising. And then, and by the way, today, now I will say my leg, my shin, especially my calf and my lower leg in general, super stiff. And I've basically decided it's kind of like whiplash, right? I basically had a fairly substantial soft tissue trauma. So there you go. So it's just been stiff and it's been recovering. The second day, of course, was really, really painful, but I've just been very gentle and no compression, and I laid off the ice after the first day. No bruising, no anything. So I'm like, okay, so I just have to take it easy and we'll see what happens. So yes, I've been super gentle, super cautious. And so yesterday afternoon, evening, Friday, I slowly bent down at my waist. So not a great idea, but I figured out that will stretch my legs a little bit. So I bent down to actually pick something up off the floor or near the floor, and my ankle popped. Like literally the muscles were tight enough so that I pulled my ankle. So a little, and that was me, sorry. And I was like, and it became a little bit easier to turn my ankle back and forth and to move around. And so didn't suddenly wait back to normal, but I was like, okay. So when I rolled my ankle and I heard the pop, it's entirely possible that I actually popped my ankle out of alignment. Any chiropractor or chiropractic fans out there, if you are a chiropractor, you can tell me. But, joints can move around and so on. So and I haven't checked this. I'm kind of afraid because it just kind of weirds me out a little bit. I could push on the fibula and see if it moves. But when I did some research, the fibula can move like that, as I was experiencing. If the joint is so the fibula at the joint is out of place, right? So I figured, okay, so maybe at my ankle, it's a little out of whack. I figured I may have done some damage to a ligament or something. So my fibula is floating around and not seated properly or something. So I'm like, okay, but I'm not getting a ton of pain when I rotate or when I'm putting weight on it. I can stand on my right leg. I've been able to do that since Tuesday. So, okay, seems fine. But yeah, so popped it back into place, I think, because it got a little bit better, a little incremental improvement. And by this, it's Saturday night. Now at this point, when I'm getting out of bed, if I'm laying down to rest, I will say this, my leg gets tired. Like I can just feel kind of not achy, but I'm like, I don't want to lose my balance, something dumb. So every couple of hours, I just take a break, go lay down, rest my leg, basically. So getting back out of bed and moving around again, that first, second step is getting a little bit easier. So generally speaking, getting better. So yeah, pretty good. So that's one plan. Hey, let's undo falling off that staircase. No, 4 flights of stairs. It's not really a staircase. Four steps in a flight. It's a little half flight. And it's literally just steps to level the residential floor with the parking structure floor. So, 4 steps. And from now on, I will not do that. I have learned. So my plan to recover from that, undo that silliness, is going along swimmingly. So that's good. I cannot tell you how freaked out for the first 2, 3, 5 minutes. Certainly the first 2, 3 minutes when I was sitting on these steps, like, am I even going to be able to stand up? Luckily I have my phone if I need to call somebody. And then, of course, I'm like, okay, so the hospital I know is less than a mile away. I've actually been to that emergency room briefly. So I know where it is. I know what to do when I get in there if I need to. And then I was like, oh, wait, there is an urgent care. So I'm sitting there in the first 2 minutes thinking, should I just walk to the hospital? And then I think I mentioned this on Tuesday. I actually did, when I stood up and that was painful. I actually did bring the box of boxes to the recycle dumpster. And then I walked back to my home. And that was painful. But quite a swirling, like, is this broken? And quite a relief when there was no swelling and bruising and the other typical symptoms of a break. And now this lightning speed recovery is going along nicely. So I'm pretty happy, actually. I'm pretty excited that things appear to be going my way as far as mobility. I like being ambulatory. It's a key for as long as possible. Next, a tale of palace intrigue and a long play. It's been months to basically test, and probably it was not really a mystery, but based on how the test turned out, see how the action unfolded, I guess. So what was it? Probably, well, for the past year, my interactions with nonprofits, the nonprofit we have here in Vegas and another one in California, and the characters involved and so on. There was, let's just say, I kept saying, are you ever going to have like a board meeting of your organization that I'm a part of? And that organization is working on a for-profit product software. And I said, well, I'm the nonprofit. I'm involved with that, and you guys are doing a for-profit product development effort. So I'm not really a part of that. So, I mean, I can, lend a thought or two here or there, but, and I would keep asking, like, how is this related, or what's going on? And I would ask some of the people working on it. And then I found out some of the people working on it are maybe getting paid. I'm like, well, I'm just a volunteer on the board. I'm not getting compensated for anything. So I don't know what's going on. And I stopped really tracking it because I'm like, they just talk about the product that they're working on. There's no business discussion. And then later there was some detail about business dealings and so on. I was like, these are all, let's call them contracts or contract possibilities, right? Agreements to do work or to make some sort of commitments. And if you've never done open source development for nonprofits and all this stuff, when you're doing open source development with volunteers, it is just not a good idea to enter into support contracts or development contracts where volunteers are doing the work or where it depends on volunteer effort, right? Can't really write a contract around that. So you pretty much have to have employees, or you have to be able to pay or outsource it or however that works or whatever. So I was like, I still don't understand what's happening here. But I have weekly office hours. So 2 or 3 people from California would call in, 1 or 2 people that are also on our board of directors, and then one person that was working on the project. And every once in a while, there'd be maybe 1 or 2 other people. So they would join in on the office hours, and it would turn into a discussion about this other thing, this other entity. And I had commented a few times, hey, this is not a meeting for some other company. This would figure in later, right? Or Friday, actually. So I started like, what is happening here? I don't understand this arrangement. I kept asking, like I said, what is the relationship between the for-profit effort and the nonprofit, and why are there always meetings during this yet another organization's meetings? Like, you guys meet during someone else's meetings? But I just kept doing my thing. I'm like, well, if you guys aren't going to have a board meeting, I'm not working on your product, but if you have a board meeting, let me know. So we had a board meeting on Friday, the final of the year, but it turns out the 2 board members I had mentioned were not really interested in participating in the organization here in Vegas anymore, or at least that's what I have now gathered. So they did not accidentally miss our September, November, and December board meetings with no comment, no, hey, that's the way it is. And so I said, well, we just have to have the last meeting of the year if you want to come or not, But I'll be honest, I kind of knew that they would not show up. But here's the part, though, that really was the test that I mentioned. So the California organization had their first board meeting of the year after being in existence for almost a year. Fiscal years end at the end of June in this case. So after almost a year, just shy of a year, hey, we're going to have our annual board meeting. So I was going to attend, and it was at 6 p.m. on a Friday, two weeks ago maybe. And I had been up for like a day and a half. So about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm like, I'm just going to close my eyes for a minute. Can you know where this is going? So at 7 p.m., I wake up, I look at it wasn't 7:15, it wasn't 7:30, it was 7, maybe 7:01, 7:02. I probably could have jumped on the call. It may have still been going on for all I know. Don't know. Why do I not know? Because I didn't. I was laying there and I was like, you know what? This is telling me something. I just don't want to deal with this. Like, I'm so frustrated by the way this has been handled for the last, I just kept asking, when is there a meeting, or what is this around? What is going on with this thing? And the whole time I'm being as transparent as possible. So, and of course, this is my view of the world. So of course it's correct. So we have our board meeting. Only one person of the 2, we have a small board, but we're only 3 years old now. So that's another story, another time, what we do next. So one person shows up and I said, so is the other person going to show up? I sent a text. I'm not sure. Okay. So I said, okay, well, let's just get started so we can wrap it up. So we'll just run through the agenda real quick and any thoughts or whatever. So I call the meeting to order, right? Being slightly pedantic, but we have the minutes and everything. And it's a requirement to have at least one annual board meeting for our nonprofit corporation here in Nevada. So, and we spoke for a couple of minutes prior. I said, well, okay, so we're good. Do you have anything you want to talk about, or no? So we called the meeting to order. And I said, now the first item that was tabled from September that was never covered was, when do we want to have board meetings so that people can attend? And this is when this other person decided to attack verbally, remotely, and wouldn't let me speak and kept talking over me and kind of yelling at me and claiming this and that, and I never did this and I don't show up for things, and it became apparent that this person didn't understand the difference between a board meeting for a nonprofit corporation and a project meeting, or talking about random project status, or collaboration meeting, or like, hey, you want to actually do some work, like not meet about work, but actually do work and talk about it while we're doing it, like remote working, right? To work on this for-profit thing. So he said, why am I supposed to come to this meeting and you can't come to our, and I said, what are you talking about? This is a board meeting. It's not a work on for-profit software that I'm not being paid for. And that was not getting through to this person. So anyway, the other facet of this was, that's why the other board member doesn't show up, because you don't show. And I said, but yeah, these are not the same thing. But it was interesting that this person admitted. So the take home, here was the test and then the outcome. The test was, okay, I didn't show up for their board meeting. I didn't show up for one board meeting. We'll see what happens. I was like, clearly I'm not too excited about this. But I said, you know what? They're not going to show up for the board meeting again. I bet. The fact that one person showed up and then just started to rail, I adjourned the meeting, and that made more trouble. Like, that what you didn't have that, and then this and that, and I'm like, yeah, you were out of order, so doesn't really matter. But this person, at the end of our whatever it was, we didn't have a proper board meeting, so didn't make it. But this meant that both of these board members had missed 3 consecutive board meetings in a fiscal year. In our bylaws, it says that that's grounds for reassessing continued participation on the board. So I kind of thought that would happen when we ended our interchange, our engagement. I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to resign from your board because clearly this is not worth pursuing. And if you would like to, you can do whatever you want. So he also resigned, and then the other person haven't heard back. But either way, neither of them are really eligible to continue, which is fine. So I said, great. So I guess that's the end of the story, hopefully. Now, of course, I get the sour grapes email follow-ups and so on, and how you did this wrong and that and this is the kind of person you are. I know, okay. I didn't even answer. I always go back to a famous comedian. Maybe you've heard of him, Louis C.K. He's made some big mistakes. Others have made far worse mistakes, but he's certainly not always an angel, to say the least. But I'm only saying that because it's sort of interesting that this is the quote that I go to. He was famously married, and he had 2 daughters, and so a lot of his material during those years was about family and being married and having kids and all the trials and tribulations. And at some point, he was in a divorcing process, and so it's one on YouTube somewhere you can find the time frame where he says, well, my divorce is final, so we got divorced. And everybody's like, oh, and he yells at them, expletives and whatnot. He's like, when somebody tells you that they are divorced, you should be happy for them. You should be applauding in this case, or there's no reason to be sad. The people that are getting a divorce or that are breaking up, if good relationships don't end. So if they have broken up or divorced, they're probably both happier now. They're both like in a better place because it wasn't working out. If it was working out, they'd still be together. So in my mind, for me, going our separate ways, and I ended, when I responded and I sent notice like, hey, good luck, continued success. Somebody who's more aligned with what you're trying to accomplish should take my seat, and I'll continue doing what I'm doing, and onward and upward. But for the other party so far, it has been vitriol, and I'm sure there's bad karma, bad insights and commentary. I'm sure I'm awful and evil and all this. There's a drastic misconception about what an open source organization doing volunteer work is responsible for. At one point, I was told, it's my job to go meet with other people. And I said, it's not my job to do anything. So just drastic, as an attorney might say, a complete failure in meeting of the minds. Just completely and totally not on the same page. So from my point of view, it's like, okay, that's it. Move on. Do your thing. Good luck. not the case on the other side, apparently. So we'll see how the other board member responds. But either way, both people are, with my best wishes, off to continue their work. Good for them. And then I have to find some board members who actually understand and care and want to participate and so on. And here's the funny part. Like I said, I'm not, or in the case of this other organization, I'm a board member on a nonprofit, and you're working on for-profit things. And like I said, the person who got all upset with me was absolutely conflating the business of the nonprofit and the board meetings and so on, which didn't happen until the one I missed, completely mixing that up with how come you're not participating in the chats and the meetings and the whatever for the for-profit stuff. And then he said, you're not coming and essentially selling the other thing that you're working on, and that's your job to do. And so just a complete lack of understanding about this is a work in progress. So I'm not really out to quote unquote sell or convince. Like, it's not done yet. It's not done yet. So absolutely complete lack of being on the same page, meeting of the minds. So I'm glad it kind of worked out this way. I've been anticipating this since the November meeting was skipped. And I'll tell you, it was actually probably during the October meeting, because these other two people did show up, but they bailed early. So we only got through half the agenda, and then they decided, oh, I got to go. So not taking it seriously. But here's the thing. All of this has been sort of a wet blanket and generally a detriment. It's been unhealthy, dysfunctional, kind of like before a couple gets divorced. And now in a divorce, one person will sometimes have the sourest of sour grapes. And that might even be the best way of viewing some of those bad feelings. And I kind of envisioned that in this case. But for me, it was as though, even though I'm hobbling around my home with a cane sometimes, and I've been in pain and moving profoundly slowly by comparison to a normal few days, haven't really been getting the exercise as usual, so I'm feeling lazy and sometimes in pain and so on. But I'm like, wow, it feels like a giant weight has been lifted from me to get away from this dysfunction. So I am identifying with Louis C.K.'s insights. Some of the other things are not appropriate that he did, clearly. I'm not trying to diminish them, but people have done far worse. But he was still not a good actor in that case. So, hopefully everybody learned from that. But yeah, good relationships do not end. And I think that is correct. So number 3, mixing ideas and action when a plan comes together. I've been talking for too long about various ideas, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not trying to make an excuse, but so somewhere in the middle there, the stuff that's been going on for 1 year and then technically 2 years, and then some of the other bizarre stuff from when we first formed this nonprofit. So of the 3 years we've been up and running and doing our thing, this is really the beginning of actual possibilities. So the last 3 years of forming and trying to establish and getting some stuff sorted and organized and an agenda put together and trying to find people who want to attend board meetings every once in a while, still trying. I'm hoping that we can actually start doing some real cool stuff and see what happens. But at the same time, my own entrepreneurial efforts have been sort of dragging a little bit. A little bit dysfunction goes a long way. So I haven't really talked about it on this program. I've certainly talked about it in Cafe Genius Impresarios and the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, which is the nonprofit. So now here's the deal. I've been talking about this for 3 years. When volunteers work on stuff, they can either do it because they want to do it, or they can do it with some longer term vision, or what's called a long tail, right? Okay, we'll put the effort in now, but over time it might turn into something, or we'll see if we get something back from it. Sometimes what you get back from it is not financial. Sometimes it's not even really tangible. Maybe you fix a problem and some karma gets thrown your way at some point in the future or whenever, right? So it's difficult to attach like a tangible value to volunteer effort, and you should be doing You should be contributing your volunteer time, effort, and expertise because you want to, or because you believe in the cause to which you are contributing these, or you want to just do it for fun, whatever it is, fun, or whatever your motivation is. The motivation really has to come from within first. But I've been talking about this for 3 years. Like I said, the labs notion, and I always go with the Google Mail, now Gmail, was beta, Gmail beta, Google Mail beta. I think it started off as Google Mail, but I don't remember. But I got a beta invite, and I got my very first Google Mail account about 2002, I think, like shortly after the beta invites were available on a larger scale. So I wasn't in on the cool group, but pretty early. And so I've had that email address forever. I have my personal company domain I've had since 1996, but that's a different story. So Google Mail, Gmail, beta, I think it was beta for 13 years. I think I checked on that at some point, but I said, you kind of try ideas out, and you could say, and it came from Google Labs, right? So I said, we could have Innovate for Vegas Labs. We'll take when we get something working, and the default is like a software project, but it could be anything. That's why Innovate for Vegas and not Code for Vegas. So innovation can take any form, many forms. So when something is like usable and viable, let's spin it off, and we'll have Innovate for Vegas Labs, or we'll have a commercial entity that will deploy and see what happens. So we can monetize it. We can, whatever the model is, it doesn't have to be the same. It could be, oh, this one is advertising driven. This one's a membership thing. This one's just a plain old donate button, but the donations go to the actual developers and so on. So we as a nonprofit, we don't actually pay people. We don't pay me even. So donations only go to whatever we need to operate. We haven't really gotten donations because I haven't really been trying to get them. But once we spin out something to a labs deployment, you can now, and then technically it wouldn't be a donation. It would be like a sponsorship or a recurring, almost like a Patreon, right? Patreon or a subscription. Yeah. So we could literally take volunteer effort and spin it off into a for-profit monetizable revenue generating thing. And now people who are volunteering have the first refusal on continuing this effort. And it could be software development, it could be graphic design, it could be who knows what it is. It doesn't matter. It's whatever the roles are. They're like, hey, do you want to continue working on this? But in a startup, basically, this would be a little startup that we spin off. Not a new business idea, not a new model. I mean, this has been done. So as opposed to the thing that's going on that I talked about earlier. So this, I've been clear and upfront. I talk about it every once in a while if people ask or they're curious. I have an old presentation about it, which needs to be refreshed a little bit. But yeah, so very transparent. At no time should somebody be saying, am I working for free on something that's going to benefit you? And I would say it's going to benefit you too. That's why we're doing this. So yeah, I always tell people, I don't want you to work for free, but I want you to be willing to work for free. Just like how startups work when, I'm getting 1 million stock options, but they don't have any money yet. They're bootstrapping, or they only have enough funding to pay, subsistence wages, all these things. These are about believing in what you're trying to accomplish. Maybe you're in it for the money, or maybe you're in it for the fame. Maybe you're in it to solve a problem. Maybe you're just curious, et cetera, et cetera. So, and these are all things that people should talk about and not wonder for a year, almost a year, and then be somehow vilified for not showing up for the meetings that you didn't think you were supposed to be a part of because you're not working on the product. So I try to be more. And so the take home lesson for me is to continue being, and in fact, be more transparent and put more things in writing, make more things visible and so on. So that's always a work in progress. But my own startup ideas now. So here's a tricky part, but it's not tricky yet. The Innovate for Vegas Foundation has 2 projects called MyMuni. It used to be called My Vegas, but to make it more general for anyone to use, so it's not a Vegas-centric thing. So MyMuni stands for like municipality or community. So it's just meant to be a city or a town-oriented platform for information awareness. And then the other side of that is welcome, as in welcome to fabulous Las Vegas, for people visiting a place. So there are some things that will be oriented towards I live somewhere, so I'm more in need of services that are kind of leaning towards residents. And other people are more tourists or visitors. They're especially here in Vegas, of course, we get a lot of visitors. So this has always been something that I've described as, we try it here, but what we develop here doesn't need to, stay in Vegas. The marketing, which I will not. That's an old marketing slogan. What happens in Vegas can happen in your town too. How about that? We'll make it modern. So one of my startups that I'm pursuing is going to be based on this, and sort of like a WordPress model. So the My Muni and Welcome initiatives will eventually roll out to MuniBits, and MuniBits can be deployed, which I'm going to do as my startup here for information awareness and information sharing and so on. So that's going to be my startup. So clearly, other people should be able to work on my startup, correct? No, not really. They would be able to work on MuniBits, which is itself possibly an external company. So that's sort of nebulous right now because we haven't gotten that far. But MuniBits could be like a WordPress, and you could actually work for them. It's an open source project, but you would do continuing engineering or custom designs or consulting and so on. So it'd be kind of like a service bureau. But here's why it's not a problem, because I'm the only one working on it. So for now, I'm totally fine with whatever we decide because it's me, myself, and I making that decision. So technically, the nonprofit Innovate for Vegas Foundation has nothing to do with what would be spun off into this MuniBits layer. MuniBits could either be a part of Innovate for Vegas Foundation when things get to that point, which they have not, or MuniBits could be its own thing. And again, similar to WordPress. I'm not a fan of WordPress, but let's keep that example because everybody is familiar with WordPress, literally everybody. But hey, here's some open source software. You can pay for services, maybe some hosting or something, and then there will be my startup, which will be based on that software, and then I can write any other additional components or whatnot. So that's the plan. But then eventually, I hope to have this question that I need to answer, which is, hey, there are more people working on this now. How do we offer opportunity for volunteers to continue their efforts, but for some sort of compensation? I mean, it could be that, hey, do you want to take this as now a deployable product, and you can actually, separate from the foundation, you can monetize it, right? Maybe 2 or 3 people that have been working on this thing want to form a little consulting group or something like, hey, yeah, we'll do custom configurations. We'll do deployment support. We'll do custom features, whatever the case may be. So because we're not committing to this now, it could be anything. And it could be things that work for people who want to do them. So I'm personally kind of interested in this. And that's why I'm saying mixing ideas and action is like, hopefully now that I don't have to deal with the frustration, angst, and wet blanket that was kind of laying across everything, I can get back into talking about this and actually doing some of that work to get the MuniBits platform into a functioning state. I mean, it's mostly idea right now, some pieces, but nothing coherent that other people would want to work on. So we got to get into a state that's attractive and then have people say, oh, okay, I see what you're doing, and go from there. So hopefully we will actually be able to get to some point where the ideas and the action can kind of meet. Like, oh yeah, okay, so we work on the open source stuff on a volunteer basis, and then there's these possibilities, and oh, what about your other initiatives, and so on. So I have the in Las Vegas is the information awareness platform for Las Vegas. And in this case, it doesn't have to work in other places. It'll work here. And we'll lean into the 40 million people and the fun economy and so on. I've actually had a conversation with a local, I guess it's like a 3-day accelerator, like a mini accelerator. It's not really. So I had my video call with them. I don't think it's a good match, but we'll see. We'll see what they come up with. That would be in July. So July 5th, I think it starts. So if I don't hear from them this week, because they promised that they would get back to everyone with a yes or no. So if I don't hear from them for this in the coming week, I'm going to assume a no. I'm already assuming a no. But at the same, I didn't talk to them about the in Las Vegas. I talked to them about my other startup, which I've been talking about for 10 years. And it's like, hey, if I keep talking about it, somebody else might do it. It seems unlikely. But that one I will talk more about, but in a nut once it kind of reaches some form of presentable something. But that needs to come together. So that's been an idea forever. The time has come, etc. And it's a good idea. Both of these are good ideas, to be honest. The in Las Vegas or based on MuniBits. So the MuniBits platform, in my opinion, has possibilities as, I mean, headless content management systems are now a big thing, but I think there's always this like, how would I describe this? They're very opinionated. That's the usual way you'd say this. WordPress, oh, it's PHP. Drupal, oh, that's PHP too. Also, oh, you have to use Svelte, you have to use Vue, you have to use React or React Native, you have to use Postgres. Nope, you have to use MySQL. Nope, you have to use, this one's based in Go or whatever. So the architecture, I suppose, that I'm proposing, first of all, will be drawing from history. So making use of RSS feeds and RDF, resource description framework, and sort of a semantic web angle. Semantic web is still around, by the way. But also add things like ActivityPub. So make a federated decentralization of first class designed from the ground up component. ActivityStream, which is ActivityPub's payload, I guess you could say, is RDF-ish. I think it's literally RDF, but if you'll find schema.org data structures, which is itself also RDF-ish, JSON LD data and so on. So the take home is if we can get a platform that actually works in an unusual and interesting way, that should be interesting for people to use as a platform for various things. So in my case, I would like to use it for a variety of things. One, in Las Vegas, one, the platform that we would use to showcase our own initiatives and efforts and so on for our foundation, possibly for the other startup I'm working on and for some other ideas. So basically an application platform that will work, taking some of the old and some of the new, but not so opinionated. So more opinionated about protocols and interfaces for programming, less opinionated about languages and architecture, if that makes sense. It's an experiment. We'll see what happens. So I'm actually like I said, the wet blanket has been removed or dried, but I'm feeling much more optimistic. And it's obviously my own failing to let Palace Intrigue, like I said, to let Palace Intrigue actually ripple through other things and slow things down or sap the will, etc. So yeah, that's been a learning lesson of sorts and something of a disappointment. I mean, it's never fun to say, you know what, this has been not a good thing this whole time. So that's a little frustrating and maybe kind of sad, but lesson learned, move on. Let's get some of these ideas going. So I'm kind of excited about that. I'm hopeful that we can get a couple of board members that are actually interested in doing what we're doing and pursuing it. And, in deference to my former colleague, be transparent right up front, at which I've already been telling some people that I'm reaching out to, hey, being a board member of a nonprofit foundation does not mean you have to actually work on projects and do day-to-day or anything. I'm doing that, but we're literally looking for people who can tell a story, who can represent out in the world. Like, oh yeah, I'm part of this nonprofit that's doing some community elevation, civic volunteerism. Oh, I didn't know about that. Tell me more. That kind of thing. Time commitment. I literally said, I don't know, 45 minutes quarterly for board meetings, if that, maybe. We can do ad hoc meetings. So if there's something to talk about, we'll have a meeting. It could be quick. We'll have one annual meeting to satisfy the legal requirements. And, who knows? Maybe you'll be interested enough to want to spend more time. It's hard to say. But our ask is very small and we're not making giant deals with anyone. So it's really about community elevation and looking into the future about cultivating a culture of innovation and working within the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem here and getting civic volunteers, young and old, to meet in the middle somewhere, maybe mentor, mentee, but in both directions, learn from each other, create some scenarios where people gain job skills and life skills from collaborating and all kinds of fantasies. But best laid plans. So anyway, I don't think there's any other major things. Still keeping up the normal, even though I was hobbled a little bit, I've kept up my media production schedule. And again, even though I knew our board meeting was going to be mildly contentious, I didn't know it was going to be as contentious, but it's also the Band-Aid finally being ripped off, or the stitches being removed, or the end of the end of the beginning, perhaps. So there you go. That's where I'm going to leave it for today. But thank you for listening. As always, thank you for listening to me. I guess do a little tiny bit of venting, but also I'm really happy at it, I guess, or I'm relieved, I suppose, that my leg is not. Maybe I don't want to jinx it by even saying it, but should I cross my fingers that my leg appears to be getting better? I appear to be recovering faster than I thought I would have, and so that's always a pleasant surprise, and that's making me optimistic also. So yeah, maybe ideas and action will be two great tastes that go great together when some of these other factors are removed. And even though my leg was only a factor now for 5 days, it could have been worse. And so it's one of those things like, maybe if there is fate, maybe it's smiling upon me now. So who knows? And that is where we'll leave it for today. Thank you for listening, as always. And don't forget to check out all the various other audio programs. I really need to put links to my audio programs on the Ko-fi site. There are links to the buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo link page, which is the profile. So it's just a big page of stuff. So there are links to all the audio programs, links to my various GitHub organizations, which contain all these other things, my favorite coffee beans as affiliate links, and some other stuff. So yeah, and then don't forget Monday mornings, Buy Me an Update, 5 minutes of pure, unadulterated audio. There you go. Thank you again. Take care.